If you were going to put $100 down as to why I'm in Studio B tonight, what would you think it is? You're not going to believe it. In fact, you are going to believe it. I went to Studio A, and there was a firmware update for my mixer. I did that, and then all of a sudden, guess what happened? The audio didn't work again. Yay! And then I was forced into restarting the computer and taking on a small Windows update. And here's the best part. It's the same exact problem, but all of the old solutions don't apply. Of course. So I rushed home with a half hour left, and I set myself up over here. I did all my tests, and we should be able to pull off tonight's episode without any incident, hopefully. And tomorrow, in the midst of everything else that I got to do in preparation for tomorrow night. Thankfully, Jay Gulinello is going to be on the show in studio tomorrow night. So anytime that there's a Jay Gulinello show, I don't have to really put too much elbow grease into the format because we can eat up 3 to 4 hours of talk easily. But I do have to go and just open up the books again with Jim Lee tomorrow and see what the hell's going on. But hey, this is why we have backup studios. But we don't have a backup to this one. So, please, Jesus, stay with me. Anyhow, welcome to the show. It's 7:02 p.m. I'm really happy to have you here tonight, and it's definitely a chilly one, but it's all cozy. It's all good. You should have seen Aurora's face when I walked through the door, and she looked at Mom like, "What am I seeing? Daddy's home?" That was nice. I like that. And I also have I have a great story for you too. So Lauren told me, because, Lauren, she said, "Oh, I didn't tell you today." She came in to talk to me when Aurora was, she went to go hang out with my mother for a little bit, and she went to stop by and say hi. My mother, very, very exciting. She had a new stove delivered today to replace the old one that couldn't preheat to anything. She'd put, a pizza or something in there for 5 hours. It'd come out still. It wasn't getting hot. So it's an old stove, and now the new one came in. So they were marveling at that. And while she was marveling at that with my mother, Lauren was telling me that Aurora did something amazing. They were going into the bath or something like that, and she called Lauren's attention. Aurora called Lauren's attention over to the light switch. And she said, "Mommy, I know what this says. I know this says off." And she was putting it together. What she was doing was she was looking at the words, the letters on the light switch, and she was sounding them out. And she said off, and also made the connection that it's a switch to put things off and on. So she's making all these connections, and she's reading little tiny things. Reading. I said, "Aurora, it's very, very good for you to learn how to read, signs, especially traffic signs, anything else." But the fact that she started reading, and she's been doing little things like that, it was a very, very proud moment. Very proud moment. And now she's just like trying to spell everything, sounding everything out, getting halfway through words like towel. We got through TOW. So what do you think comes next? Towel. What makes the wah sound? So we're getting there. Just wanted to throw that out there. My baby girl is reading light switches. Next year it'll be War and Peace. But anyway, so thank you guys. Thank you so much. Reading. All right, let's see. All right. Here we have a little something from the Daily Star. You want to see how crazy things are? And I love it. I really do love this stuff. Let's just keep rolling with it. Oh, here's the other thing. Marley Hornick is coming on the show tonight. Formerly of New York Citizens Audit. Now she is at the helm. She pretty much is at the helm of something, I think, a nationwide operation, United Sovereign Americans. We're going to be talking to her tonight because what started off as the New York operation not only is still making headway in New York, which we'll discuss. She hasn't been on with us since election night 2023. Okay. Obviously all local elections, special elections, stuff like that. It wasn't a midterm, but at that time she had already started doing a lot of work on the general election for 2022 and what the midterms told us. Okay. So now we have a little bit more of an understanding on that from a nationwide standpoint, as they have considerable amount of data collection being done in, I believe, 21 states. And then, of course, more on the New York front. It's just going to concern everybody. And the best thing is that tonight, you at home are going to be able to call in and ask her questions. I'm sure that people are going to have all types of things to ask. From as simple as an involvement question, what can we do to get involved, whatever, but also technical, mechanical, anything in it. Write down your questions and call in, because after I've got everything out that I want to hear her discuss and break down, I'd love to finally bridge this gap and get you guys to be calling in. I've set aside the hotline number, 914-369-1236. That is what we are going to take the calls on when the time comes, obviously, and I will let you know when we do that. So this is going to be great, because now this is officially the dawning of a new day where you guys are able to get in there and ask questions of the guest. Hopefully very conscientious questions, even if you don't agree with what they're doing. I just want to come on in. Let me be the mediator or moderator, and let's just see what you guys have. This is going to be fantastic. But on the other front, the grab bag front, here's what we have from the Daily Star. This is journalism, by the way. To some people, this is journalism. The headline is, this is from the UK, Putin's poodle, I guess that's Donald Trump. Putin's poodle loses it as man-baby Donald Trump blames Ukraine for being invaded. Well, it's not necessarily Ukrainian people's problem. And it's very loose, to describe Ukraine as its own autonomous country is a very, that's something I wouldn't go as far as saying either. But they're continuing to scream, because they want the carnage to continue. All these people want the carnage to continue in Europe. They're continuing to really double down on this idea that, Russia just is a bigger country and they saw a smaller country they can take advantage of and they just invaded. And if we don't stop them here, they're going to take over all of Eastern and Western Europe. They're just not going to stop. They're going to keep taking it all. They're desperate for the money to keep flowing, for the blood to keep flowing. And I don't know. I think the biggest thing is this. There's resources. There's a lot of clandestine operations going on in Ukraine, things that we've been able to tap into with the biological end of things, on the human trafficking end of things, but on the rare earth mineral end of things. So you have resources out there, very resource rich, but it is such a coveted piece of land by the global deep state, the international deep state, all of the, run by the intelligence agencies and everything else like that. It's not so much about losing a conflict. It's about really losing status in an area that has become a very profitable shell company for you. It's a shell corporation out there, the so-called Ukrainian state. And the fact that this is where, I know that the Daily Star is essentially a tabloid, but still, headline, Putin's poodle loses it as man-baby Donald Trump blames Ukraine for being invaded. No. We can blame the CIA and Mossad and, of course, the United States State Department that essentially picked this ridiculous pro-NATO, pro-EU administration over there, and all the people who set up shop, from our own politicians and, corporate interests from around the world and God knows what else. There's a lot there. And of course you can blame a couple of generations of people for, thumbing their nose at any kind of anti-westward or eastward expansionary agreements, whether it be at Minsk or anywhere else. So yeah, there's they like to reduce this to the most absurd thing ever. It's Ukraine's fault. Well, I wish that we can actually get a little bit more honest about it and talk about who actually has their hand up Ukraine's skirt and is working it like a puppet. I wish we can talk about each finger of the hand, to be honest, because it's not one monolithic group, but like most things, a nice, group effort. Anyhow, so there you have it. On the home front over here, leftists who are running on fumes for whatever is the last bit of PAC money. I don't know where the money, there's probably still a lot flowing around out there, but still, you remember last summer when these well-paid DNC wormy people like, the Harry Sissons and all the 20-something-year-old gimps that pretend that the future of the United States is the Democrat Party and the kids just love Democrats when they're the cringiest, most racist people on the planet. Well, they're doing this really hilarious thing now where they're pretending that DOGE is waking everybody up. I've actually seen some of them say they're waking the sleeping giant because a couple of thousand people got together in New York City, a city of 8 million people. So a couple of thousand people who weren't working got together and now in other places they're trying to organize anti-DOGE protests all over the country. And it's just hilarious to me that they're continuing to flail around and say, this is something's happening here. Do you remember last summer, late last summer into early fall, where they're saying, oh, did you see the crowds at Kamala Harris's rallies? Did you see the clown cars filled with celebrities? Every celebrity known to man, every old aging rock star with diabetes, everybody that showed up in wheelchairs, all the rock stars, Mark Hamill throwing up all over himself. They all showed up. Oh, something's happening here. They say it over and over again. Something is happening. I don't even know what it is, but there's just something electric going on. And of course, the election was not even close. Now all those same people who should just be retreating into a quiet life of penitence and just being away from everything, seclusion, and just penitence. They want you to think that the DOGE audits, that for anybody who is conscious, is looking at this, knows it does not affect them at all and is absolutely ridiculous on the face of it, what money was being circulated and who was receiving it. Because nobody has even said anything about what can be considered a reasonable cut or a tweak to the benefits that people are receiving from something like Social Security. We're just talking about all the shit that was piled on top of it. The vampires who are receiving money and is being funneled to someone else. The fact that they rolled out everything, they played all the greatest hits. There was a Nazi rally at MSG, and now those same people want you to think that the DOGE audits have suddenly awakened the sleeping giant. The 8.5 to 9 million people who did not show up to vote, they were just sleeping. There was no reason for them to vote. But the DOGE audits, oh, if that had happened back in November, it would have been over. That would have been the October surprise. If people would have known that the federal government was going to have its skirt pulled up and we were going to see all of the horrid things that our money was going to, that would have definitely put Democrats over the edge. Right. Hey, whatever. As I said on Twitter today, te salud. That's it. I wish you a lot of luck on your way. All right. Well, there's a little bit more on this. I'll see. Delta CEO doesn't want to reveal the identity of pilots involved in the Toronto crash and insists that the crew was experienced amid rumors that the doomed plane had an all-female flight crew. Yeah, I saw things about a flight crew. They wanted it to be unmanned. I don't know. All the plane stuff is ridiculous. I'm very happy that I have committed to road trips if I'm going to go anywhere over the next couple of years, and that's just that. And then something else to look out for. I believe tomorrow we'll do this, and then we're going to get into the show because Marley Hornick is in the waiting room now. Marley, just give me a moment, please. Here is from Time. U.S. and Canada face off in a politically charged four nations hockey final. You heard about this, I'm sure. We were talking about it on the morning stream on Monday with the coffee. Geopolitics has found a new battleground on ice. The U.S. and Canada men's hockey team set to play in the four-nation face-off tournament final on Thursday night have come to represent more than just their athletic skill. On both sides of the border, the rivalry in the rink has been seen by some as an extension of the political tensions between the once friendly allies. As President Donald Trump has incensed Canadians with tariff threats and talk of the nation becoming the 51st state, fans at a previous game began between the neighbors on Saturday booed during the playing of the U.S. national anthem, which has become an emerging trend. Fuck them all. I don't give a shit. We're not booing your hockey players. We're not booing your country. Yeah, we're just booing the national anthem. We're not even booing you, a Canadian fan posted on X. We're booing Trump, who keeps threatening our sovereignty for zero reason. Shut the fuck up. Shut up. Once he leaves us alone, it'll stop. You're not. Stop it. Stop it. These people, wherever they show up, if they're leftist ninnies in the U.S., leftist ninnies in Canada, they want to be wanted so bad. And they ultimately know that they're safe, which is why they can, stick it to them. We're going to boo. Get the hell out. Just shut up. Anyway, like I said, I really have to start watching hockey, especially when the games are meaningful. I understand what's going on. I don't know all the rules, but I've had a lot of fun watching hockey with friends. I've never seen it in person, and it was really nice. It was really nice to see the 3-1 victory and the drubbing, the physical drubbing that the Canadian team got. Now, whether or not that is repeated on Thursday night, I don't know. So that's going to be something else. Tournament's round-robin games, which began on February 12th, have been played in Montreal and Boston. Canada and the U.S., who each won twice and lost once, will go head-to-head again, this time in Boston. In Boston, huh? Boston, if there's anything left of your damn heart, please be loud. Please be loud. Final on Thursday at 8 p.m., airing on ESPN. So tomorrow, around the halfway point in this show, I'm going to have to get a stream up somewhere and give you updates on everything. We might have to watch or at least listen in on the opening ceremonies where the national anthems are played, just to see what's good. Hey, I like a little drama like this. I like a little sports drama. I can put up with that. I like it. Okay, let's get started. Because we got Marley Hornick joining us in just a second, and I don't want to waste any more time because I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say to her as well. We will be right back.
What do you have to say to the American hockey fan? The United States of America! Canada's on top of the hockey world, and we're going to prove it tonight!
I didn't like it. Seconds in, another one, 1 second later. 9 seconds in.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's roll!
All this stuff, and it has a lot of really amazing data that we can pine through, and I can't wait to do this with her right now. Marley, do you hear me?
Do, Frank.
Oh, it's so good to have
See
you on
you.
again. How's everything been?
Really busy. United Sovereign Americans, New York Citizens Audit. We have been insanely busy and getting it done for our country from the people's side.
Yeah, let's talk about the country, and then we'll talk about New York, because since we last spoke in November of 2023, your gaze has really, really turned about going national and connecting everybody and getting people activated wherever the hell they are to do the work that you have told us many times in the past needs to be done in every state, no matter how colored red or blue or somewhere in between they are. This is a very, very bad issue that's all over the place. But there is a February 3rd press release that you put out that is quite staggering, and I want to read it with you on the screen, or at least just a couple of parts of it. Here it is for immediate release. This is from February 3rd. So the USA teams, that's United Sovereign Americans teams, to present election audit data to state legislatures. So this is the data of forensic audits from the 2022 general election that you did, right?
Yeah, we're going to be able to use 2024 in many states as well. We're just working as fast as we can to get that audit completed wherever possible. So there are a number of states, and we can take a look tonight, for example, at data from California that I was just there last week presenting to lots of the patriot groups there, and it's just staggering, honestly.
Uh,
It's really sad for the American people.
just the snapshot that you have provided me just through these press releases alone, and I'm sure that there's more that you're going to show us all. I'll share our screen here so you can do whatever you'd like and show whatever you'd like. But just take a look at this, everybody, for a second. USA has studied federal elections in 21 states. Okay, so we're talking about a much bigger sample size than just New York, which was which was deemed a national security threat in and of itself. And this is the first organization to measure the current election misconduct as defined in criminal law. Forensic audits of the official 2022 public elections record in 7 of those states uncovered the following. This is just 7 out of the 21. You found 22 million non-compliant voter registrations, 7 million votes cast by these registrations suspected to be unlawful, 1.4 million more votes counted than voters who voted. I mean, anybody who knows how thin the margin of victory is in so many of these races these days, to have these numbers just floating around out there is really incredible.
Yeah, it's staggering. And actually, it just makes me want to talk through what's a non-compliant voter registration. Um, Under civil rights law, there is I'm gonna pull up this slide. Oh, this is my favorite slide. I'll just show this quickly. Look, right here, you see this red box. See here's the we the people.
Yeah.
And see this red box, the third sentence? This is the one that says the people of the several states shall choose their representatives. I always like this one because you know what? You can't even discuss what Congress does. You don't even have a president or a court system. First thing you do is establish that the only source of all authority in the United States of America comes from elections where the citizens of the several states choose representatives. And that means they can unchoose them also. I just love that slide. I can't get enough of it. But I want to talk about that non-compliant voter registration thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because in civil rights law, actually, and this is really important because a lot of the time when we argue about elections, we think we need to argue about the outcome of the election. And that is the hardest place to make a strong argument, actually, because it's very hard to know the outcome if it's close and there may have been a little fraud. And how do you prove it in time? And how do you prove that it was intentful? But the process side of the elections, when you go after the process and show that the process is not legitimate, that means the end can't be legitimate. So, a materially deficient voter registration inside of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 cannot be allowed to vote because it's an open legal question. You cannot figure out if that person is qualified. No one can. No one has goggles to figure this out. It has to be investigated and resolved as a legal question according to the process the state has, which usually involves, in fact, it always involves all parties signing off on agreement that this has been legally cleared out, right? So here, this is over the 21 states. We have, I'm going to talk about this one, for example. We have 10 million, almost 11 million invalid registration dates. These are people registered to vote according to the official record. You go to Saturn and back, there's no other federal record for this. It says they are registered to vote before they were born. It says they registered to vote on their birth date. It says they registered to vote after voting in one or more federal elections. So, how on earth can
Those are.
anyone make sense of that legally?
Oh,
You can't,
you
right?
see, when you put it that way, Marley, that makes it so much more. It's one thing to say, oh, well, there, there's a smudge of the pen on the birth. You can't. It's
Right.
ineligible. But when you're talking about dates that are impossible, that it's before a person is born or on their actual birthday, or things like that, that's not what most people who are not criminally minded would consider. So it's staggering that we're
Right.
talking about 11 million people or 11 million ballots that could be cast in this way based on fraudulent data like that already.
E- Exactly. And that's why they're called under the law materially deficient, because you can't make a clear legal choice. Like this one, 33,200,000 registrations altered. These are people whose birth dates get changed, right? Whose birth date gets changed? Why is some election official or registrar in the database mucking around with the birth date field 3 million times? What does that even tell us? It tells us basically what we talked about this. Gosh, we talked about it, I think in June of 2022 or something. The system is breached. This is not a normal data situation. And I think, hopefully now people realize that all these years we've been talking about this, DOGE is pulling out the same stuff from Social Security. They're pulling out the same stuff all over the government. And it's like, it's real. It's a hot mess. Um, and and let's just go ahead and take a look, for example, at what happened in California in 2024. What does that actually measure up to? Well, in the California state voter list, when the election was administered and certified, there were 9.5 million registrations like this. You got 3.8 million registration records that are backdated, which means you look at them in 2022 and it says there's this particular registrant with this name and this state ID number was registered in like 2019, right? And then you look in 2024 and now it says the exact same person with the exact same statewide number was registered to vote in 1984. How does that happen? How is that a legitimate basis for authorizing 52 people to sit in the United States Congress?
You see,
How can that be?
I don't know, and you brought up something very interesting when you brought up Doge and what one of the biggest things that we've been discussing the last couple of days, and that is Social Security. And
Yep.
this incredible statistic that we have literally tens of millions of people who are over the age of 109 years old, some older than the Constitution, who are out there and obviously not collecting because they're not alive, but it's going somewhere. And when you talk about this, not only people who have these very strange birth dates, but also birth dates that change over time, I naturally start wondering how this is all connected, where people who are not citizens, people who are in this country for one nefarious purpose or another, are able to just create personalities and tinker with records and match old, reusable, in many ways, altered Social Security numbers with identities that not only give you some, benefits, actual financial benefit, but also voting rights in some kind of a way, because you know that there's no real check on any of this stuff, and there's just so much crap going on. There has to be a connection to it all. That's what my mind says.
Yeah, I agree. I disagree in in limiting the scope to actual humans, whether they're illegal aliens or not. I think that a lot of this is being done by injection, but we're working on getting to be able to prove that. Of course, as you know, we've not been able to get meaningful investigation yet, despite having provided comprehensive reports of these findings in 21 states in advance of the 2024 election. In some states, well in advance, like in New York, over a year before that election, completely ignored, sent to the Department of Homeland Security, sent to the FBI, sent to the DOJ, and obviously filed in the dustbin. So, this is hopefully now that we're seeing all this in other areas of the government, people will realize this is very real. And you mentioned people 109 and over, there are a huge number, over 15,000 people, I think it is in New York, who actually had the opportunity to vote for Lincoln and Trump, which is, that's some serious cred.
Wow. So
That's a lot of,
you've already been able
that's
to
like,
uncover that kind of vampiric statistic already in just New York alone.
well, maybe it's not vampiric. Maybe it's really about making America healthy again. I mean, they didn't have all these chemicals in their
It's
food back then, for
true.
all I know.
It's true.
They just hung on.
If you voted for both Lincoln and Trump, you certainly have avoided the GMO corn for a long time. That's for sure. Let me ask you before we move on to something else. Oh, well, to more what you have over here. One of the more glaring questions I have is, now that we are living with the opportunities that we have right now that we wouldn't have had if the election in November had gone the other way, have you been able to make any meaningful contact with the Trump administration? Because this needs the utmost attention.
Yeah, we've been working really hard to establish that contact, and it's been challenging. I'm not going to lie. Something interesting about what United Sovereign Americans achieved before the 2024 election, which was nothing short of miraculous. Lots of kudos to my entire team. Our entire team at USA pulled this off really together. But we took the 2022 findings we had and we brought them into federal court. So this is just unprecedented, right? Citizens just hopping mad, just sick of it, and getting really smart, getting focused. We did this massive audit of 21 states. Our data team is credentialed up the wazoo. There's over it was over 700 years of credentials inside of that team to do exactly this kind of comprehensive work. And here we can skip ahead since you put that back up. I'll show you how many of those folks voted while I'm talking. So we took those reports, we filed them, and nothing happened. Even the states where we thought maybe those chief election officials, maybe those attorney generals would take an interest and say, wow, this looks really bad. Let's find out why it looks this bad in our system. They didn't. So we filed 9 federal lawsuits. We raised $500,000. We hired an attorney, Bruce Castor Jr., who is the former Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, and also the gentleman who represented President Trump in the second impeachment trial. He thought these arguments were rock solid. He thought they were great. And we ended up making an agreement. We filed in 9 states, just asking the federal courts to force the states to come into compliance in advance of 2024 and give the people the suffrage that third sentence the United States Constitution requires.
Mhm.
Like, how can you say, here's California again, how can you say that 5.5 million ballots with material legal questions that were just posted right through the control process of our federal elections, how can you have a process that is outside the law that secures the law? How can that be?
You see, the one of the questions that I had for you that I really wanted to make as a part of the title of the show, I wanted to say, well, Marley, how blue is California for real? How blue is, New York for real? And I guess the real, it wasn't meant to be rhetorical, but whenever I speak to you and we go through the data, I guess the real thing is, you can make your assumptions that we are being groomed into thinking that there are certain political trends that are that's just the way it is. We've been groomed. You see so many elections go so hard in one direction in a place like New York and California, and you just kind of say, okay, well, hands up, the state is lost forever. But the bigger overarching theme here is that there's really no way to know what it is, what these states are.
Exactly.
Maybe it's bluer. Who knows? But I don't see how that could be the case. But the real question is, the real thing is that there's no way to validate anything with what you're showing me here. We're talking about, I mean, that's 5.5 million. What would California look like if there was a negligible 5.5 million votes taken out of what was just collected in 2024? I mean, it's insane, especially with the shrinking vote margins in New York and New Jersey. I mean, a lot of that, the gap between Democrat and Republican shrunk up a big deal. I would love to talk about New York in a second, but go ahead, give me some more of your thoughts.
Well, I think speculating about the redness or the blueness of a state is, it's really tempting and it's interesting sometimes to do that. But actually, we don't really have a lot of time to just noodle. This is my perspective.
Hmm.
We have a country that is still really in a dire situation. We're doing a lot better right now, but we have a one vote margin of sanity in the United States Congress. It I don't think that's the correct margin. I don't think anyone knows what the margin actually is. And that's the problem. Now, there's kind of a key point here. In those lawsuits that we filed before 2024, we made the Attorney General of the United States a defendant because clearly the law is not being followed. And part of that law is federal law. And the United States Attorney General has a duty to uphold the law. And interestingly, you know, the Attorney General of the United States filed to dismiss in every state. They don't have a discretionary choice here. They don't have decision to say, well, I do or I don't want to investigate 29 million material violations of the law in regards to our voting systems and 10 million votes cast by those outlandishly uncertifiable records. So, why do I say that? Because inside of the Constitution, we always have to go back. It's like we get out there, we're in social media, we're thinking things through, we're asking red, blue, we're having arguments. We have to go back to what America really means. The entire system is designed to make sure that you, as an American citizen, are free to choose according to your conscience, which was given to you by a creator, nature and nature's God in the Declaration of Independence. It was given to you by a creator, and therefore no human being has the authority to stand in the middle of that and supersede that authority over everything, except that there's like a social contract, they called it, the Constitution. So when the Constitution says in Article 4, Section 4, that the federal government is guaranteeing a Republican system of government, not to the states, but to every individual American citizen. They owe that to you. Every American citizen is guaranteed, promised, and owed a Republican system of government in the state and in the federal government. And when we send them 29 million material violations of federal civil rights law, 10 million of which voted, we show them that 2 million more people voted or more votes were counted than voters who voted. And they tell us to dismiss. They tell us, get out of here. We don't want to talk about it. That is a material violation of civil rights, you see. They can't do it. So those first lawsuits we filed, it's like that's step one. We're peeling an onion here, but we will never, ever stop until we take this all the way down to the mat and get our country back. Thankfully, we have an administration now that will work with us, we hope. But the interesting thing is now we're actually adversaries with Attorney General Bondi in 8 states. She has a great opportunity right now to look over those cases, look at the information that was reported, look at the comprehensive reports that had been submitted prior and say, "I think this should be investigated." She can moot her position. She can investigate based on information that was brought to the previous administration. It's not political. It's not retribution, nothing. We can go straight at this and fix it everywhere for America because we can't stop until we get representative government again. And we don't have it right now. We don't know what we have, just like you said.
Yeah.
We actually don't, nobody knows. And the people who certified it and said they knew, if they don't want to fix it, they're going to be really in a heap of trouble. And there's nothing I can do to stop that from happening. I can't protect them from what they do when they certify that and they swear this was dead accurate. Look at this 5.5 million votes counted by people who are not provably qualified to vote, according to the state's official record that they maintain for the federal government. This is it.
And out of the 20, you said something before that was pretty staggering too. 29 million violations, and of them, 10 million cast votes.
Yep, in the 20 across the 21 states, across that entire audit. That was the 2022 midterm. Now, well, look, 2024, it's worse.
Well, here and that's the thing that's my mind is, I don't know what calculations to even try making loosely, because in 2024, we saw 8 to 9 million votes that were there in 2020 disappear. We didn't see a transfer from Democrat candidates. It wasn't like people had a change of heart and we saw Donald Trump run away with 90 million votes.
They just never got cast.
Never got cast. And to think that there's probably another 10 to 9 million votes mixed in there somehow, favoring one side or the other or whatever the hell, that need to also be adjudicated or removed or made sense of. I mean, the amount of fraud we're talking about is pretty breathtaking.
Yeah, and just to be clear, it is fraud to call it accurate. And the slide that I just put up is interesting that you brought that up about those missing votes, because we published this study just before the 2024 election. And I will never know. I will never know. And no one at United Sovereign Americans will ever know absolutely with certainty that this could be the reason for that shift, or a part of the reason, because I think a lot of people worked really hard to make that happen. What we did here was we studied whether or not we could verify the identity of the voters in 7 states. So we used the federal method, like the official federal method for randomization, and taking a statistically valid prevalence sample to ask the question in 7 states, do these voters exist? So the first question, we hired through our attorney, we hired a private investigative firm, and they used 3 different law enforcement databases that are used to find people in space and time with great precision. And we looked across 3 of these different commercial tools to make sure that we weren't missing anything. This is what happened. We discovered, and this is the 2022 election now, right? In California, they had 11 million votes counted. We could not find 993,000 of their voters. They don't exist. Then the second question we asked is, did they vote from an address that they actually lived at? Because remember, these are databases that find people precisely in time and location. And we couldn't find 2.25 million of their voters at the place they voted from within a 6-month period on either side of the election.
993,486 people who voted but do not exist.
Don't exist.
What do you?
They're not in any of those records.
I don't know anybody that could look at this and scoff. How could anybody look at this and scoff? Because that could go, like you said before, this is not political. That can go for or against a party. You know, there's no information on it other than what should match up in a very basic way doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's just total chaos. And Pennsylvania is really a train wreck in 2022. 477,000 votes counted from people who don't exist there. And then here's us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had, just about 6 million votes counted. 129,000 voters don't exist. 985,000 votes from invalid addresses. And it's not because of NCOA. It's not that, this isn't from the United States Postal Service. This is from law enforcement databases. And then, on top of it, they counted 35,000 votes that they just can't account for whatsoever. They don't have no idea where they showed up from, but they just counted them just like yours. They counted them right straight equal to yours, Frank.
And wait, in 2022, that was when Kathy Hochul went up against Lee Zeldin.
Correct. That was also when Attorney General Letitia James was elected, although nobody really knows if she was elected. You got a 21% error. This is straight election fraud. These are illegal votes right here. You're looking at illegal votes in the system. 21% of the vote on average across those 7 states. How can you call that? How can that legitimize Kathy Hochul and Letitia James? And if they wanted a legitimate election, wouldn't they come out screaming and saying, "Hey, we want to make sure we were really elected"? If that was their goal, was to make sure that they held due authority.
I'm trying to get a thing over here. We have, let me see here, 62581. So in New York in 2022, there was a difference of 377,000 votes between Kathy Hochul and Lee Zeldin. And she was incredible. And that's when we start seeing the collar really start tightening in New York with people not liking what was going on. Kathy Hochul is a hand-me-down governor on the heels of, the disgraced Cuomo, who's now thinking about running for mayor. Incredible, after killing 30,000 people in nursing homes. But just to see right there in New York that the 984,000 people without valid addresses and 128,986 people who literally don't exist but voted. I mean, there is the margin of victory is in those numbers almost 3 times.
Yeah, I know. And remember, this is not an invalid address because it's missing an apartment number. This is an inability to locate the voter from the address associated with their vote within a 6-month period on either side of the election.
Let's stay in New York for a second because I have a question. I have this over here. It's your the release from February 11th. I think it's pretty interesting. Here, let me see. Window capture. There we go. New York election deniers move a mountain. First of all, last time you and I spoke, you were in the middle of getting smeared daily by Letitia James and everything else that was going on because, of course, what you were doing with trying to audit New York was going hand in hand with what they were essentially trying to take Donald Trump down in the off years. It was a part of election denialism that goes hand in hand with why people fomented insurrection and all that other stuff. But what you have over here, this is from February 11th. I wanted to get this up here. New York forensic audit of 2022 midterm, 5,808,232 registrants with material omissions and errors. As defined by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, these voters cast 729,208 improperly counted votes, helping elect 27 members of Congress. NYSBOE's subsequent report, the New York reign of error, resulted in a tidal wave of state and media attacks and criminal investigation by Attorney General Letitia James, who was also elected in 2022. The shocking results for New York show that 128,986 voters who voted in 2022 likely do not exist. And of course, there's the 984,000 number again. I mean, this is just so big. And of course, this is where everything started for you in New York. So I wonder where it all goes from here.
Well, it never ends until it's resolved because it's to say it's unacceptable is to put it as gently as it could possibly be said. It's appalling that this continues to be our election system in New York. Our first opportunity to report this to law enforcement was a meeting with the Special Investigations Unit of the New York State Police on June 27th, I think, of 2022, the day before that Republican gubernatorial primary. They passed the investigation to the FBI, to the Foreign Intelligence Task Force, and we're still living under this system. And I, you know, I think the main thing that there's two ways to look at this. Okay, so there's the immediate problem, which is we have to secure 2026 because we have to keep the winds coming for our country. We can't go back downhill ever again. We have to keep going back to the beautiful America that we all deserve and can have according to our founding documents, and it's unique in the world. If we let it go, where is the place on earth that inalienable rights will ever be protected again? Really, get through. The other thing is that we need to protect this concept of individual rights really, really strongly again and restore the fealty of the government to the citizens, right? Because that's what our contract says. We ratified a document, we signed a contract. It's a constitution, it's a binding agreement. Citizens with government. The government stays over here and we're over here. This is what we get to decide. Here's what the states get to decide. And here's this tiny little thing that the federal government gets to decide. It's like this tiny little place. They get to do that. And that's not what we're experiencing. And it's harming so many people, Frank. It's just beyond tragic. I mean, it's appalling what is considered acceptable right now in America for behavior, whether it's officials or whether it's anyone else. I was on the radio this morning. I called into Buffalo. I was like, hey, you guys have this all wrong. They're arguing about the situation with the prison guards going on strike. How are we more concerned with the rights of criminals who have committed violent crimes against people, beautiful people trying to live their lives, than we are concerned with protecting and upholding the rights of the people who are attempting to keep that system controlled and fulfill their duty to secure the public safety?
Yeah.
It's insanity.
Oh,
So we have to fix it. We have to fix it as a matter of immediate consequences in 2026. And then we have to fix it as a matter of civil rights in perpetuity. We have to make this law again, which means we have to file more lawsuits. We have to keep going. And these next lawsuits that United Sovereign Americans is preparing are on the basis of civil rights. That means it's no longer a lawsuit that says, hey, we happen to notice like these 25 billion, whatever discrepancies in your records regarding, those 52 seats in Congress that you certified. You want to clean it up? You're like, you want to fix this now? Now it's personal because when those officials sign that certification document, when they say, in their official capacity and as an individual human being, they say, this looks good to me, send them to Congress. And they actually have no idea what the heck happened. They are personally accountable for that decision under civil rights law. And we do intend to file massive civil rights lawsuits against the most egregious states because we can't live like this. It's intolerable.
no.
And I believe that the new administration wants to fix it, but I don't know when they'll fix it, and I don't know how they'll fix it. We're ready. We're like locked and loaded. We're ready to go, and so we're going to keep moving.
I have to imagine that, everybody's talking about 2026, that a lot has to get done before the midterms, because you can't plan on still having majorities in Congress to do anything substantial past a midterm. Midterms are notorious for being bad for the incumbent, for example. But the added stress of all of these tools on top of it, this is all tools. It's tools for fraud. It makes a lot of things that are very, you can't rely on it either way, because what we're talking about here, like you said, with the government's mandate to provide a Republican form of government for all citizens of the United States, that is completely overridden. I mean, first of all, we're not really represented by Congress anyway, because we're not following the Constitution with apportionment of what our representation should look like in Congress. 530 some odd people do not represent the interests of a collective 300 million. That's ridiculous. So we're ignoring so many things, prescriptions off the bat. But the fact that there are powerful interests out there that could very easily override any legitimate will of people, by what operating within the margin of chaos that you are so stunningly showing to everybody and filing with the public on the public record right now. I mean, it's stunning what can be done to negate what is legitimate public will here. And but there's more that I want to ask you, especially one thing. And first of all, are you okay with taking some calls from the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
love to talk to people, but I just want to make one before you go. I just want to say one thing about what you just said. Um, I'll say it again. You cannot have process conducted outside the law that secures the law. And so when people say, "Oh, it's so tight and it's going to be these razor margins," and we can't cede an inch of territory. We cannot. And people make an assumption that this is the Democrats or this is the liberals. We actually have no idea who's inside this system. You cannot inject that many fraudulent votes one at a time. This is injection, and we don't know who that is. We don't know what their ultimate goal is for our country. We
Okay.
don't know.
Okay. So that's the question I want to ask you while I put the hotline number up. So I want people to call if you have questions for Marley Hornick. You want to come on. I want to take some calls and work this into the show. But there, in one of your releases, there was a section that said, "What is the risk?" And here is what was published. USA's analysis shows the voting system is in a total loss of control breach. A national cyber infrastructure designation defined by the Department of Homeland Security. There is a marauder in our system whose intentions. Now, when you say a marauder in our system, I thought, okay, a chaos agent. There's a factor of chaos in our. But then when you start talking about intent, that brings something a little bit more specific in for me. Intent is a very human. Whoa, hold on 1 second. So my question is that, whose intentions are currently unknown, and there is likely more than one. So we're talking about a person or a specific group, I assume, because you're talking about intent here. So is that what you're trying to find, if this all comes back to certain specific groups?
Well, we don't know who is doing it.
Mm,
That's what I'm saying. You can't inject 5.5 million votes manually.
gotcha.
Imagine the number of people who would have to be involved.
Hmm.
You have handfuls of people. Sure, you got ballot box stuffing. This has been going on forever. You got ballot box stuffing. You got this. They used to call it cooping. They literally would go around New York City and like grab the drunks off the bar stools and they would put them in the back of a truck, bring them to a site where they had a fence. They would throw them in the fence and then they would leave them there until election day, keep them drunk, and then have them fill. They literally had it. They called it cooping, and they would all fill out ballots. Okay, so this is not new. But to be able to do something like this at this scale indicates that there is a deep breach. That's what we're talking about. There is a breach in the cyber security structure that is supposed to surround this. And this is critical national infrastructure, the voting systems. So
It's a,
they're supposed to be the most secure systems in the country.
it's a good point.
Somebody's in there and we don't know who it is. And we don't know what they're actually trying to do.
Okay, we have a caller, 559. You're on the air with Marley Hornick. Go right ahead.
Hi there. Is this
Hello?
hello? Can you hear?
Yes, I can. You're breaking up just a little bit, but go ahead.
My name is Leslie. I'm in Central California, and I want to say first of all, Frank, I'm listening to you since TB recommended you. I haven't the show ever, and it was about a year ago that you had Marley on, and she talked about United South American. Got me so excited for California. I joined United South American, and I became one of the people that goes out and speaks at the city council.
Okay, I'm so sorry to do this. I'm picking up bits and pieces of what you're saying, and of course, all pre-show. Okay, sorry. All pre-show tests, Marley, always go perfect. All pre-show tests always go perfectly, and that sounded like it was going to be a great call. It actually sounded like she is a volunteer.
Yeah.
I was getting whatever.
Wherever Leslie is, we're so happy that you came on. Thank you, and thank you for working so hard out in California to make a difference. You know, we have people going. Do you know almost 700 times in the last year, United Sovereign Americans volunteers went to their local town boards or their city councils and presented this information and a resolution for a legally valid election in 2024. It's just amazing because, you know, it's like everybody has this idea, oh, it looks good enough, or you're a bunch of election deniers or whatever. And then you present this in the context of the United States Constitution, the law, and it's very powerful. We're educating a lot of people, and people like Leslie who just came on. We couldn't really hear you, Les, but great work. Thank you so much.
Well, let's try it again. Leslie, is that you? Leslie. Hello? I really want this to work because it works flawlessly. You know, when we do it beforehand, and this is just something I was really interested in. Hold on. It says it's on hold. Let me swap it out. Leslie, are you there? Okay, I'm ending the call. Oh, there's just so many things I have not figured out in my little corner of the universe, Marley. So to think about
There's not as many lava lamps as there used to be. Maybe that's the problem.
Now, this is my home setup because, you know, there was audio problems happening at the big studio that you were in. You know, you wouldn't fit in this studio. You know, if I ever had a guest in here, it would be like we'd be stacked like a fighter jet. But anyway, yeah, I really wanted to see. Okay, I guess the main thing is before, you know, we'll keep the line open and we'll give it a shot with somebody else here. But we're talking about next steps now, and I guess the biggest thing is how can people get involved, because you put it out there before, and obviously there were many people who answered the call, Leslie being one of them. But now the playing field is kind of leveled for you a little bit. There's different pathways that have opened up that probably would not have happened under, let's say, an unfriendlier DOJ. I hope that you make inroads with the Trump administration, because we always talk about what happens after Trump. And now the big thing that we were analyzing prior to November and in the weeks after the election was you have a guy who had enough magnetism to carry the entire thing on his back and to motivate people to go out there and get out the vote. And then combining that with a ground game on election night of lawyers, of poll watchers, people who are ready to do battle, and miraculously, a big hunk of the fat that was there cushioning the DNC and Joe Biden in 2020 was gone. And there was a miraculous, whatchamacall, a popular vote win that we thought we'd never see again. But that goes away in a couple of years. Donald Trump is at the end of his political career. This is his final term, no matter what. And we always have been asking about what is going to be able to set the culture here in the United States, especially civic culture in the United States, on a little bit more of a permanent healing path. And unless what you're talking about tonight is taken up as a very serious, if not a major priority, combined with the fact that there is going to be no Donald Trump to go out there and be a kingmaker and whip votes in the way that he does, that the Republican Party cannot do, that's the end. And I don't care who comes next, as long as what you're talking about with tens of millions of violations that need to be, that has to go. I don't care if I'm part of a losing effort in an election, as long as we can certify that there's there, because there's a lot more reflecting that could be done when you lose an election or when you win an election. You learn a lot about the country. We don't know anything what's really going on in the country. That's why so many people are in different parts of the universe right now with what they see as being reality. And so this is a major part of just having our perception of ourselves come back into focus.
Right. Well, I agree with everything you're saying, and I also I have to plug my team because those 9 lawsuits that we filed ahead of 2024, and then producing and publishing that report about, basically, we got you 8.6 million illegal votes counted in 2022. You're busted. We're tracking you on a very deep level. We see you and we're counting what you're doing. That was very powerful. How do we know it was powerful? Well, we became an immediate target of the Brennan Center, of Mark Elias, of the League of Women Voters, and of the NAACP, who started filing motions in our lawsuits all over the country, in particular in Texas, where they know we're very likely to get a fair hearing in front of Judge Kaczmarek in the Fifth Circuit, or in Amarillo in certain district court. And they're trying to block that information, or that decision, let's say, from surfacing in our lifetimes.
But
They're
what
terrified of our lawsuits. They're terrified of our lawyer. They're terrified of our data, and they're terrified of our arguments, because there's nothing they can do about it. It's the darned official record.
Well, here's the thing. Let's say that the righteous thing happens, and this has its day in court, and it is a 100%. The doors are blown off the hinges on this one, and it's just all out there. Let's say there is some sort of action that is now then compelled by the power of the court to do away with. Like, what is the fix? Because, as you said before, the whole idea about cleaning the voter rolls, you can't stand things like, we got to clean the voter rolls, we need election integrity, all that stuff. If you could compel the states to do something that will fix this, what is it? Is it a complete decimation of the system, a reboot? What has to be done across the board?
Well, that's a good question. In 2026, there's no real likelihood of a complete reboot because of the way the law is structured. I love President or Vice President Vance's suggestion about amending the Constitution, but in order to do that, we have to change representation dramatically. How do we secure the system we have? This is a terrible chart to look at on a tiny screen, so I apologize to everyone, but you don't have to read the words. I'm going to show you. Okay, basically, here's the first step of an election. Because it's critical national security infrastructure, the first thing that has to happen is every piece of equipment and every personnel involved, every software application, they all have to pass the risk management framework under critical infrastructure. There can be no foreign parts, all of this stuff. It has to be absolutely bomb proof. And then if it is, you can proceed. If it's not, you see this red stop sign here? That's it. You fail. You can't use that system. Or you have to reboot the system, rework it until it does pass the framework. Now you can start registering voters, right? So that's down here. It says verification here. If the voter doesn't verify, this is a control point in the election system. If the voter doesn't verify, you don't put them in the voter roll. You boot them out and they fail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, everybody's really pumped up about voter ID. I think voter ID is a great idea. It would really help election officials do their job effectively. But if we add voter ID, that's right here. You see that little X right there, that green spot between the voter roll and the ballots?
Yep.
That's where voter ID goes. Okay. So it doesn't actually solve the entire problem. It's a great thing and it should be done. We should have it. It's stupid that we don't have it, but this is where it sits. Now we distribute ballots, right? So now we got in-person votes, we have absentee votes, and now we have this horrific mail-in ballot problem. So let's take away the mail-in ballot problem, right? Look at all these stop signs. We still didn't solve the problem. Because here, down here, those ballots are supposed to be judged. If they don't meet the standard of the law, they go over here, they're provisional, they get investigated. If they're no good, you throw them out. That's what this stop sign is for, right? If they're good, you put them in. Now you want to get rid of the machines? Okay, this is getting rid of the machines. You see how many, there's all these control points. The way that this system works properly, because here, like you got your tallies now, but if you fail chain of custody, like in Carrie Lake's case, instead of arguing the outcome, they should have argued that they had to throw out 260,000 ballots or really just re-administer the entire election because they failed to administer a valid process.
Chain of custody was a big thing that was brought up all over the place. These things are these ballots
where the
are.
heck did the piece of paper come from?
Yeah.
You can't just count every piece of paper. That's just idiots do that, right? How do you secure the biggest world power using, whatever piece of paper floats into through a window? It's so stupid. And we have to get clear and we have to hold that line. We have to be prepared, whether it's the administration, we support them, whether we file these other lawsuits, which we're drafting. United Sovereign Americans we need your support. We need financial help to get these lawsuits done. And we love to have all the volunteers. Anyway, back to the process document here. Remember there was I think we talked about this in New York, right? They were allowed to have 48 errors in the 2022 midterm and they had like 729,000. That is a process control. That's a failure point. They failed, right? And then down here again, you give everything to the chief election official and they have to audit. This person, if you're going to sign that document and here's the state government and here's the federal government and you're right there in the middle. You're like the one thing in the middle and you sign that document and now both of those are supposedly legitimate in their ability to secure perpetual liberty and individual sovereignty for you, every single individual American. So they better canvass those records, right? And then if everything is legit, they certify. And if it's not here, it fails. They have to do it again. So really the solution, and this is the United Sovereign American solution, and we have draft legislation about this that's already hitting the presses up in DC. We've already been meeting with congressmen and women and meeting with some senators. This entire thing has to go into a container and you secure the container impenetrably. If you want to use this system, that's how it works. And then the other thing is the other part of our legislation that is totally unique. It doesn't exist in federal law right now. Like voter ID actually exists in federal law. Mail-in ballots don't exist in federal law, and therefore they shouldn't be allowed because they're not statutorily authorized. The way that ballots are allowed to come in through the mail under federal law is totally different. So they just invented a whole new process of voting. But you see, every one of these failure points, we could study that in live time during the election. Right now, we run the whole entire process, gather in a state, 5, 6, 10, 11 million ballots. And then down here, we're like, hey, did we do everything correctly? If we studied it at every single control point on a prevalence basis, it wouldn't be the election officials doing it. This would be credentialed external auditors like DOGE, people who are, they have the qualifications, they have the security clearances, they have the indemnification, they have the bonding to do this. And they just audit in real time as the records are coming in. They just check and see how many of these records don't meet the standard of the law. If they fail, then you check a larger number to see what's the prevalence. And if that fails, what do? You don't just keep going. You tourniquet the system right there.
What you're showing everybody on that, and I'm glad that we're ending on this because that's the meat and potatoes right there. That if you get the mandate, which it is a mandate, it's a constitutional mandate. We are mandated to have a functional Republican form of government.
Yep.
But if that is actually seen and heard in a courtroom in a meaningful way, it's really something. And I know a lot of this is just about ignorance and whatever, but for everybody out there who knows what's going on and they like the way that things are, they actually, in just looking at that graph that you were just showing us with all the different layers of filtration for fraud that's in there, and they're practical, there's nothing political, it's completely apolitical.
Yeah.
But now I can see why so many people who benefit from the way the system is right now, both Republican and Democrat, because there is a Republican establishment that is just as anti-democratic as the left. They're one of the same. There's a lot of Republicans and Democrats who hate what's going on with the DOGE audits right now and the layoffs. They love it. I mean, everybody should remember the Republican Party was the first progressive party in this country. And now I can see why probably a lot of special interests out there love that we are so hyper fixated on voter ID as being almost like the silver bullet. You know, and like you said before, it's very important to have it in the mix. But just looking at that graph you put up there, voter ID didn't even come into the mix until like layer 3 of what would have been fundamental election security. So yeah, to find focus on stuff like voter ID is, I mean, we got to expand our thinking on this one. I can see what you're saying. And now all of the materials that you have there, are those made available through the website that I have linked in the description of the episode?
Yeah, most of them are on the website now, and some of them we're working on adding so that the entire set of materials is there for people to look at and really comprehend. It's really important. Because we can't let them pull the wool over our eyes again. If we don't understand what a legally valid election looks like, then they'll hand us toast and call it steak, and we won't know the difference, right?
Yeah, let's
And I agree with what you're talking about with both parties, because remember, at the end of the day, once these elections are certified, the people who are allowed to sit in Congress on behalf of the American people, we have now given them the authority to control. There's like that mechanical arm that comes over and then the claw opens, right? And then it goes down and it's like those, at the arcade, it
yeah.
goes down, except it's not the fluffies, it's your bank account, right? So they go into your bank account and Congress decides how much that claw grabs out of your hard-earned American dollars.
It's
So no wonder nobody wants this fixed. I mean, get a grip. Like, of course they don't want it fixed.
no,
They're
they don't.
grifting, massively grifting off the system. DOGE is proving it. We proved it years ago, but fine, we couldn't get the word out. But DOGE is proving it to everybody now. It's a grift.
Yeah, let's try one more time with the calls. 361, are you there? Let's see if this works. 361. Hello? Come on. What a absolute letdown. Seriously, what a letdown. Well, I guess that really makes a lot of things it makes a lot of sense too there. We're talking about establishments in both parties, Marley, and I often wonder, how is it when you can so easily, if you live in South Carolina, if you live in Kentucky, if you live in Alaska, if you live in these places where the majorities are not even in question, why are you sending? How is it that the best you can produce in a place like Utah is Mitt Romney? Is that that's the bold? Is Mitch McConnell the boldest that people in Kentucky can really send out there? Lindsey Graham, what's her name? Big Bird from Alaska. Are these really the? It makes you wonder.
Right.
How many people have kept the
finest.
How are they able to keep themselves in place? Why is it when you have that ability to send anybody, you can send the next Patrick Henry to the Senate if you are Kentucky, but Mitch McConnell every 6 years, you just can't get him off your back. He's like a goiter. And so I'm just, it makes perfect sense as to, how these people play the game. and all the good old boys and girls from both parties that keep the grift in an acceptable orbit with a little bit of tugging back and forth, a little bit of acceptable drama every 4 years or so. Everybody's just kept in a nice holding pattern for sometimes generations. It's got to be paying off in big ways for everybody, regardless of what color tie or what color skirts they're wearing, because it's not serving us, as you said before.
Exactly. And
Okay.
and I do want to bring up, because you asked me before about how people can get involved. We have this coming Tuesday, if you're a motivated type, we are sending teams all over the country to state legislative houses, and they have meetings with legislators, representatives there. They're bringing information from our 2022 and 2024 where available, those audits, and talking about enforcement and bringing the information about our draft legislative proposal, because it can be adopted at a state just as easily as it can be adopted in the federal level. On April 4th through 7th, we're holding a United Sovereign Americans training conference, and you can come to St. Louis, like pretty good location for anywhere in the country. Come to St. Louis, spend a couple of days with us and get really up to speed on election validity, get really clear about your constitutional rights and your civil rights and the meaning of a legally valid election. So they cannot pull the wool over your eyes ever again. And those are a couple of ways. Also, if you can't come and participate, we do ask you to, if you can, chip in on the lawsuits. We're going to keep going. And I wanted to bring up one other slide, Frank, just quick. We don't have to spend a lot of time on it, but it's so important for people to know that we have these three pathways and we are pounding down on all three of them simultaneously. In addition to the guarantee clause and the promise to every American citizen to have a Republican form of government that forces the DOJ, they have a non-discretionary duty to investigate this matter. In addition to the massive civil rights lawsuits holding individuals personally accountable for perjuring themselves in the certification of federal elections that we are currently writing, I want everybody to know there's another remedy that Congress can apply and the executive branch can apply. I don't know, am I sharing? Can you guys see this?
Hold on. I'll switch it out. There you go. There you go. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. In the second section of the 14th Amendment, so this is in the Constitution, this is law. Why does this exist? Because James Madison asked Congress, and this was ratified later, but he brought up this issue. He said, what happens if a state betrays their duty and their agreement to the national government and they don't hold legitimate elections for members of Congress? And in the second section of the 14th Amendment, they decided on a punishment. The state loses apportionment when they abridge the right to vote of their eligible citizen voters in any way. And obviously, you can read, if you read this language, the definition of eligibility has changed since 1868. But the state loses apportionment. They lose federal funding, they lose representatives in the House, and they lose electoral college votes based on the number of injured voters in the state. So I just want to leave that. There are these three extraordinary remedies, and we cannot waffle in our clarity. We can't be like, well, we want to be nice about this. We want to have a pleasant conversation. Well, we want to have a dignified conversation, right? We don't want to scream and shout, but we have to fix this. The Constitution promises us legally valid legitimate representation. It's the basis of law in our country, and it's the basis of our personal liberty in perpetuity. And we have to get this fixed. We, the people, can fix it. Those are three ways we can right now start letting everybody know. We're going to have, I think in like a day or two, we're going to have letters that you can download from uniteforfreedom.com. And you can just fill them out yourself and send them. They'll contain all that information and the summary, and just send one to Attorney General Bondi. Let her know that you expect her to investigate this matter. Send one to the Homeland Security Committee of the Senate. Send them to your state and federal representatives. Say, you guys better start looking into this because we're not going to go away.
Yeah.
We're not the deniers. You're the deniers, and we're not going away until we get our country back for the people. And like you said, what are we going to do in 2028? We're not going to have this extraordinary, like, just how unique that man is.
Oh,
Love him, hate him, agree with everything he
exactly.
says or not.
You
What a force of nature Donald
Absolutely.
Trump is.
Absolutely. That has been undeniable the whole way across. You can like the guy, love the guy, hate the guy. You can be indifferent about him, but as far as analyzing him as an animal, as a galvanizing figure, he literally put the entire half of the country on his back because there was the Republican Party had no hand in this victory. In fact, the Republican Party begrudgingly gave him the nominations along the way because they didn't want to completely cut off their nose to spite their face. They're not. It hasn't been very as public as the DNC has been over the last 3 cycles, where everybody in the if you want to see it for yourself, you can. But the DNC over the last 3 presidential cycles has very publicly gone against the will of their voters to install who they want for one reason or another. They just did it again by forcing Joe Biden off the campaign trail. And I mean, so they've done their own thing, and Democrats, they just kind of cope and rationalize in their own way, especially if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter. But the Republican Party, they wanted to keep in that very comfortable, cushy orbit, going between Romneys and Clintons and Bushes and Obamas, and they wanted to keep it very, very comfortable as well. They begrudgingly had to give the keys over to Donald Trump. He did not win because of them at all. So it's again, we're looking at a couple of years, and all I've been thinking about is, out of all the mixed bag of stuff that we're going to get, good, bad, and indifferent, all I'm wondering about is, how can there be some permanent changes made that actually put this government, at least in some way, on a track that they cannot wiggle back into this mutant form that we have right now? Is there just any trees on any branches on the tree that can be cut off permanently or whatever? And if there's any way to really put us back in the driver's seat in a significant way, it's what you're doing. So uniteforfreedom.com. I really, really wish I was able to take some calls tonight. I see a couple more coming in right now, but let me try one more time, just for sake of my own knowing. 361, you there? 361. Hey, 361, do you hear me? This says I'm connected. So it's all kind of weird stuff. Anyway, Marley, you've been great tonight. Thank you so much for the time, and I can't wait to check in with you again. You got my contact. Your team has my contact. Whenever there's a big happening, let me know, especially when it's New York related. But I know that your gaze is outward into the country now, which is great, because every state has issues, and all the issues are the same. So thanks for everything. Unite, the number 4, freedom.com. The link is in the description of the episode, and on that website is where you can get a lot of the press releases and the numbers, the published findings that we have been going over tonight. And thanks again for everything, Marley.
Thanks so much, Frank. It's always good to be on with you.
Absolutely. All right. Take care. There she goes. Wonderful, wonderful night. I mean, you're drowning in information. Really. I don't know what else to say. I wish that the phones worked. Hey, caller, you there? Yeah. It's just stupid. How many amazing, you know what I do? We're going to do a test right after this break. I'm going to go on a really quick break, and we're going to do a test. Okay? I'm going to see who I can get into the, maybe John Carroll. Hey, John Carroll, if you're out there, jump into the Zoom. I won't put you on screen or anything like that, or if you don't care, whatever. Jump into the Zoom, and we're going to do a test again. The same test that we did before. We'll do it live. Don't even care. All right, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be it won't be too long. Take care.
rated for PG-13?
What's that?
Oh, gee. Night, Bobby.
Quite frankly, he's amazing.
All right. Okay, hold on a second. All right. Let's see here. Hey, John Carroll,
Hey.
do you hear me?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Oh yeah, I hear you fine. Now let's see if we can get somebody to call in. Because if it doesn't work now, then it's just funny. It's funny to me. All right, let's see. Hold on. Caller, are you there? Caller? Hello? 361. See, Skype is where the hotline is right now. And now I've seen weird things I didn't see before where it says something is blocked. Blocking that's going on right now. Caller, are you there? 708. Lots of people calling in. Nothing.
I don't hear anyone.
No, there's nothing to hear. Lauren? Hold on a second.
Hey, can you all hear me in the chat?
Oh, they can hear you.
Okay.
They can hear you. It's just sick. It's sick. Hello? There's so many calls coming in right now. And what's crazy is it says the Skype audio connecting blocked. So is it a Skype issue? Is Skype blocking everybody's number? But that first call that came in, again, at least we heard something, but it was just kind of getting chopped up and could barely make out what's going on. The pitch of her voice was not shifted down like a couple of weeks ago, but man, it's just fuck this, man. I'm telling you, can't stand this shit. I really can't. The audio problems with the studio again. I can't stand it.
You had a great guest tonight, though.
Oh,
It's a good show.
fantastic. Fantastic. I want to take that next step. I want to hear people's questions. Yeah. Anyway,
When
hey,
you get really advanced, you can jump on that, what is it, Omegle, or you know what I'm talking about? Those websites where it's just people sitting in front of a webcam.
what, like chat roulette?
Yeah, that was the big one. Chat roulette, just see who pops up. Maybe that's a Saturday night thing, though, because there are some unsavory characters who are on that from time
I'm not
to
going
time.
to, even on a Saturday night, I'm not going to do that because it's siphoning through. So somebody, a dick pops up. I remember that on chat roulette. I remember when that was really big around 2009, 10, 11 or something. And me and the guys were at the studio, like, you should try chat roulette. And we actually got linked up with, what the hell's her name? Jessica Alba. I swear to God.
What was she doing on there?
She wasn't naked, but it was Jessica Alba. So I swear to God, we were linked up with her for like maybe 15 seconds, and we got linked with Jessica Alba. We said, "Wait a second, you're Jessica Alba." She's like, "Yeah, it was her," and it was 2010. So there's none. Even the face filters that you see people like Kyle Dunnigan using these days. You know when somebody's using a face filter, even today. So back then there was no face filters back then, but they would have looked comical back then. It was really Jessica Alba.
Well,
yeah.
Maybe she'll come on the show sometime.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Hey, you know what? While you're here, do you want to tell everybody what's going on in the after hours tonight?
Yeah, I got it right here. After hours is going to be starting off. I got this video from AK. It's Nor Jasmine, Meet the Zizians, a killer trans vegan cult.
Zizians?
Zizians.
Just what we need.
Z-I-Z Zizians. I don't know. Well, we're going to meet them, and they're a killer trans vegan cult.
Killer.
And then I found this quick speech by David Lynch talking about consciousness, creativity, and the brain. And then a Mind Unveiled, a 1-hour kind of synthesis on the Tartaria conspiracy theory. So anyone who wants a quick rundown in 1 hour of what Tartaria is all about, that'll be up. And then Jeremy Reese talking about the Trump task force he goes with the Trump task force in Congress on UFOs, JFK, all that stuff. How we're going to need basically babysitters in Congress to make sure that we're interpreting everything that we're seeing correctly. And then ending the night with Alan Watts talking about the art of breaking free. Just a very mesmerizing voice and just puts you in a good spot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's interesting though. A transgender vegan killer cult.
I don't know who they're killing exactly, just people who eat meat, or we're going to find out. I haven't watched it yet.
They're probably killing people because they can't eat meat or something.
That could be it too.
Anyway, everybody, there's what you have served up for you at the end of the show tonight in about 20 minutes. So you can open up a tab right now and wait on quitefrankly.tv. It's all been curated by John Carroll over here. John, thank you for everything.
You got it, man. Have a great night.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Well, what are you going to do? Hold on. AK just sent me something on the Gilded. In the general chat on Gilded, I just got tagged with this right now. Police arrest apparent leader of cult-like Zizian group linked to multiple killings in the United States. You got to be kidding me. It's not a laughing matter, though. Court records show Lesotho was declared legally dead by her family in 2022, who believe she fell into San Francisco Bay. What are you talking about? The apparent leader of a cult-like group known as Zizians has been arrested in Maryland, along with another member of the group, Maryland State Police said on Monday. Jack Lesotho, 34 years old, was arrested Sunday along with Michelle Zajko, 33, of Media, Pennsylvania. They face multiple charges, including trespassing, obstructing, and hindering, and possession of a handgun in a vehicle. Strange, silly putty people. According to charging documents obtained by Action News, the duo was observed trespassing a property on Piney Mount Road. While dressed all in black, they allegedly asked a resident if they could camp in the area for a month, but they were told to leave. When officers arrived, they observed 2 white box trucks parked at the end of the roadway. In one of the vehicles, police say 2 of the suspects were wearing gun belts with ammo in a belt. And further search led to the discovery of a long rifle in the back of the truck and a handgun on the floorboard. The Zizians, let me see here. The Zizians have been tied to the killing of U.S. Border Patrol agent David, up north? That's what that was? It was a transgender cult? Vegans? Near the Canadian border in January, and 5 other homicides in Vermont, Pennsylvania, and California. Let me see here. Malland, 44, was killed in January 20th, shootout with a traffic stop in Vermont. I remember that one. I do. Police questioned the Zajko's daughter at her home in Vermont on January of 23. A few weeks later, officers briefly take her into custody at a Pennsylvania hotel, but release her without charges. Lesotho, staying at the same hotel, is arrested and charged with obstructing the homicide investigation and disorderly conduct. No arrests have been made. So then what the hell are we talking about here? Where does it, who is Ziz? At the middle of all this is Ziz, who appears to be the leader of a strange group members who call themselves Zizians. She has been seen near multiple crime scenes and has connections to all various suspects. Oh, man, it looks like an Antifa rally. What do you think they voted for? They didn't vote. They're on another fucking planet. Their goals aren't clear, but online writings span topics from radical veganism and gender identity to artificial intelligence. Oh, geez. Oh, geez. In 2016, Lesotho began publishing a dark and sometimes violent blog under the name Ziz. And in one, see, I'm telling you, do these people deserve to be out in public? So there are people that need to be institutionalized, and then those who are a little bit more higher functioning that express especially violence toward us. The calls for violence are constant now. Should they really be allowed to vote? Should they really have a full complement of rights when they exist to try to bring violent end to their host country? I don't know. I don't know the answer to any of this, to the real problems, because it's not it's when you think about democratic processes like we were talking about tonight, it really falls short. That conversation really falls short when you talk about this shit. Jack Lasota moved to San Francisco Bay after earning a computer science degree from the University of Alaska Fairbanks in 2013 and interning at NASA. According to a profile on a hiring site for programmers, Lasota, who used the she/her pronouns and in his writing says she is transgender woman, railed against perceived enemies, including so-called nationalist or rationalist groups, which operate mostly online and seek to understand human cognition through reason and knowledge. Some people are concerned with the potential dangers of artificial intelligence. Okay, well, there's something else to keep in mind. The Zizians. There's always something. Jeez Louise. Always something. And talking about election interference, well, you know, Pope Francis, I know he only has like 1 1/3 lungs. I know he doesn't have 2 full lungs. One of them was removed, or for some degree. I don't know what's going on there. But apparently Pope Francis is really preparing for death. And Leo Zagami, who I told him, listen, because I watch Tim Gordon for this stuff, but Leo Zagami is another guy that I pay attention to, because I always wonder who he feels is going to be next up, if he knows anything, or this is some interesting stuff, because you want to talk about an election that is international as far as the central governing figure of a church that has a lot of people that belong to it. Really interesting here, especially with how the Pope has really stacked what would become the conclave. Really stacked the conclave. Who can possibly be elected that's going to do any good for the world afterwards? I don't know who's in the running or who would actually get. I think about it all the time, and now it seems like it's going to be pretty close, because I don't know what the hell we're going to be on the edge of that, though. 110 of the cardinal electors have been appointed by Francis, 24 by Pope Benedict, and only 6 by Pope John Paul II. So, what do you think the next conclave is going to produce? Some traditionalist? I don't think so. But we'll keep up with that. All right, let's get into the super chats. Jay Britz says, another awesome show chocked full of information. God bless Marley Hornick. Thanks, Frank. Absolutely. And everybody, God bless all of you who have put your time into what she started and the network that has built up. And it's really awesome to see that it's not only just kept going, it has expanded outward. It is starting to connect dots across the entire union. 21 states they got that data for. Staggering amount of information. What the hell are we talking about here? Tens of millions of votes. It's staggering. Stowstube says, great guest tonight, Frank. Thank you. Thank you both. Stowstube and Jay Britz on Quite Frankly Superchat.com. You'd think that website was just made for them. Some nights. Over on Rumble, we got a lone super chatter. It's Jay Semo. You think that the entire Rumble chat was made for Jay. Awesome guest tonight, and I watched the Low Tide show this morning. You were great. God bless you guys. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. And over on Quite Frankly TV, No Stud All Muffin says, Frank, it's been a shit week, but I can't thank you enough for the 2-hour escape with the Franklies. God bless. Hey, the feeling is mutual. C. Blanche, thank you. Safety Net says, high vibe, positive energy, blessings, Frankly family. Robert Sarnes, River Pike, sending their love. Braves Piano. CB Joey says, for the War and Peace Fund, you're a good father, Frank. She makes it easy. River Pike, Porpoiseful, Sean Joe, and River Pike again. You guys are really, really awesome. Let's take a call. 585, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I got through.
Yeah, I figured I'd take
your phone stuff wasn't working tonight.
Well, on the Skype, the hotline wasn't working, but the Zoom is where I have all of my guests come through, and that is the 200-0269 line. So that's always on the up and up. I have to see what the hell's going wrong with my setup over here again that I thought was foolproof. But go ahead, caller.
Well, I just loved your guest tonight, Marley, whatever her last name was.
Yes.
I always thought, I live in New York like you, and I thought Lee Zeldin won this election, and I think he got freaking screwed. And she was just great.
Yeah, I know. And it gives you a lot. That's what I'm talking about. I understand when somebody's their self-preservation, that urge inside of them kicks in. They're like, we have to get out of here. We have to get out of this state or another state. But the whole point is,
yeah. Well, I'm screwed, Frank. I'll never be able to leave the state. My wife is here. My kids live 2 miles from my house, so I'm screwed. I'll never be able to leave the state, even though I would love to go live in Florida.
I got ideas. I got ideas where I'd like to be when the time expires over here. But there's just. I have a lot. I have a lot of family considerations. I have a lot of work considerations, and I keep getting reminded that there is, you can go and you can move and you can make your immediate time a little bit more comfortable in a politically in that kind of a situation. But when somebody like Marley comes on and starts talking about what's going on across the entire union, regardless of if you are a secure red state or a blue state. This really makes you wonder what we really are, and it really starts. You really start to wonder where does retreating further and further into the interior really get us as far as making a claim for the future of the nation, when states that you would say are lost causes really aren't lost causes. It's just part of the psyop. So it's just like, who knows? Who really knows what's going on here? You think about that. You think about 8 to 9 million votes that just were not able to be injected into the equation this time around from just 4 years ago. You think about, on top of that, 30 million election violations that were discovered in just the 21 states that Marley's organization was doing any kind of data work with. And out of that nearly 30 million violations, 10 million put a vote down. So that means on top of the 9 million that just don't exist anymore, didn't change their vote, don't exist, there's 10 million more in question. Who loses most of that 10 million votes? Is it all one side or the other? Is it evenly dispersed between Republican and Democrat candidates? Or how much of a mandate are we talking about here? I mean, these are huge questions, and yeah.
Well, I hope with the current administration with DOGE and Pam Bondi, and maybe we can do something about this. Well, maybe they can look into that kind of stuff with her. That's all we can hope for, man.
Yeah, well, I get you, and I appreciate the call. And you know what? On the election front, Marley Hornick is essentially DOGE before DOGE. This is an election audit that started out of concern for one's own country, their home state. and then expand it out across the union. And I mean, now you just need somebody. You needed an attorney general. You need somebody that is willing to take this up. I really hope that they are. They just got to go knocking on doors in D.C. Set up camp in D.C. until you get a meeting with Pam Bondi or somebody. This has got to be such a huge priority. It has to be a priority. I would say a top 3 priority, along with whatever the hell RFK is doing to make people physically healthy, to shore up the voting system, and then, of course, financials, cutting off the money to literally everything. You want to turn off the spigot. The elections in this country need to be taken seriously, and not just fine focusing on voter ID. Not just fine focusing on that, though it is in the equation. That's like top 3 right there, man. Because, baked into the financial stuff is actually a big part of the border crisis that has been foisted upon us. If there's no money to be passed around anymore, if there's no loopholes, there's no nothing. Nobody's coming here. Doesn't matter how many rechargeable UN credit cards they're given somewhere in Guatemala. Nobody's coming here, and a lot of people are going to be leaving. So I would say the top three things, and then we can fill in the top 5, top 10 some other time. But geez, what else are you going to say? 646, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hey, what's going on, Frank? It's Larry in Brooklyn.
What's up, Larry?
Man, it's just like once you spot the psyop, you can see it all the way through. Even the smallest news stories, even the smallest things, if you can look at it, you see the psyops coming at you one after another in a 24-hour news cycle. And you got me thinking about that a little bit ago. I was like, so can we apply that kind of thinking to just about anything that comes out of an information source or a media source out of anywhere? And you see the plot points of the psyop, whether it's plane crashes or bridges coming down or everything else. You can create a psyop in your own mind of it, but it is CIA based. It's all they had this down in the 70s. Yeah, they had it down.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, and again, just from the election standpoint, think about how quickly you groom people into thinking that, okay, well, this is just what's going on in a state. If you are able to sway the elections in a state for maybe 2 or 3 convincing cycles, everybody just thinks that, well, that's just the local culture now. It's over. And
it's a normalization of thinking. You normalize people's thinking in a region, whether it's voting. This can be any topic that you ever look at. If you normalize, well, that's just how it goes. And it's in their mind, it's like, that's how it goes. And then you're suddenly like, well, shit, that's what they're doing. They're steering everyone's mind into a normalization of whatever it is, whatever position you're at, trans position, all these other positions. Normalizing it is part of the psyop. And, it's hard to describe this to people who don't know they're being psyoped. It's just hard.
Yeah.
But this isn't a negative thing. What I'm saying is, like, we're talking about it now and you're having conversations about it. And now we can break it down and say, hey, this is how the psyop works. And this is how the formula works. They do this, then it's normalized. And they're normalizing everyone's thinking towards a certain direction. You just have to step back and be like, nah, fuck off, dude. Not doing this anymore.
Yeah. I understand. I get it. And you know what? You're calling me from Brooklyn. I mean, that's you gotta be strong. You gotta be strong in mind to be able to navigate what you're really a lot more in the epicenter of what the craziness, the crazy culture that has control of the entire country. Because obviously what is prevalent in the 5 boroughs is very strongly reflected in Albany. I mean, those 2 cities are very closely linked in political culture, but there's also a lot of things that are shaking loose. Whether you like Trump or not, what was shown to everybody at MSG, it was impossible a couple of years ago. And even if people showed up and just as an act of protest, just to say, hey, you know what? there is something going on out there right now that I do not consent to, and I just want to show you I'm opposed to it. And
isn't that fascinating, Frank? It's like finally people are starting to talk about things they didn't talk about before.
Yeah.
Right? Whether you like Trump or not, doesn't matter. Everyone's talking now, and that's like always been my point. It's like just talk to people and say something that you feel in your mind, even if you think it's not cool, even if you think your liberal friends won't like it or your conservative, whatever, whoever it is that you hang out with, you're just like, talk about it.
Yeah.
Put it on the plate and get it answered. Anyway, I love your show, buddy, and I always love calling. I'll talk to you soon, okay?
I appreciate it, Larry. Have a good one. Take care.
All right, cheers.
There you go. All right. Well, listen, it's 8:59. Good calls. Now, tomorrow, I will figure out, well, Jim Lee and I will figure out, we're going to have to find another solution to the same exact problem because the problems at the Studio A, are becoming more self-aware. That's it. The actual, there's a ghost in the system. I've already had Bill Bean exorcise the studio once. Okay? If I have to schedule another exorcism, I will do it. Been very, very clean about how I treat my space over there. I pray a lot. I keep the place clean. I honor it. Nice, good, hard, honest work. But the ghouls continue to show up. So tomorrow I will find some time to get over to the studio, and Jim Lee and I will start poking around and see what what we have to do now, because we got Jay Gulinello coming in studio on the evening side of things. So we'll see you tomorrow night with Jay Gulinello. Friday night should be fun. I got Albert Taylor coming on. It'll be a little bit of a paranormal evening. I can't wait to do that. And then Saturday night, me, Anthony, and Mike, at least we three, are going to be together on Saturday night at the studio, and that should be nice because I got a lot of reminiscing that we can do. I'm finding old media. I'll pack a hookah. We'll take some calls. We'll just chill out, and that'll be great. On Monday the 27th. No, Monday the 24th. I don't think I'm going to be. I have to take care of something that's going to force me off air, or maybe I do a midday stream. We'll definitely have the coffee stream on Monday morning on a combination of Instagram and YouTube. But next week, we'll probably kick off the whole week on the 25th with Mel K and Roseanne, and we'll see what else happens for that last full week in February. But you guys and gals, you've been wonderful to hang out with again tonight. Crockett Man over on pill.net said, Pope Carlo Maria Vigano sounds good. He could purge the beast. Oh, yeah, it does sound good, doesn't it? That would be wonderful. But, I don't think so. Can you imagine that? That's almost like a right out of, Gladiator or something, to become excommunicated and then becoming Pope. Excommunicated 1 year, Pope the next year. Incredible. Anyhow, email me if there's anything that you need to contribute to the show. If you, of course, everything that we just did tonight with Marley Hornick, you can find on the website, which is linked in the description of the episode. I'll see you on Thursday, and say a prayer for all the computers in my life, and also say a prayer for me and my family. As always, keep us in your prayers as always. And as many of you have emailed me over the years, say, hey, can you keep us in your intentions? Please feel free to do that as well. It doesn't have to be announced on the show or anything like that, but yes. I hope you have a great night. Quite Frankly.tv is about to kick off the after hours. I hope you enjoy that as well. Until tomorrow, have a good one.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Oh.